to Casually Dressed and Deep in Conversation with me, Greg Chalmers. CDDC is sponsored by Pizza Daddy, Lanarkshire's #1 American-style pizza parlour. To stay up to date on new flavours and promotions, then get connected on the socials. The Instagram handle is @RealPizzaDaddy and the website is www.thepizzadaddy.co.uk. To see what we're getting up to here at Casually Dressed, then you can find us on Instagram with the handle @CDDC Podcast, and on Twitter it is @PodcastCDDC. Also, as you're watching this on YouTube, then please hit those like and subscribe buttons.
And tonight, ladies and gentlemen, my guest is British rower and Olympian Alan Sinclair. How are you, Alan?
I'm good, thanks. Nice to have me.
No problem at all, man. No problem at all. It's always good to get an Olympian on. It legitimises our tiny little podcast, you know. So, the obligatory question that has kind of plagued us since we began is, how's your lockdown been?
It's mixed bag.
Okay.
I'll try and tell it in a nutshell. Basically, we got told as athletes at the training centre that we would be training remotely for the foreseeable because lockdown was imminent. And so myself, my partner, and my newly born daughter, she was 3 weeks old at the time, had to come up with a plan because we had no support network. We were down in Twyford, near Henley-on-Thames, and we were coming to the end of our tenancy of our place. So we were going to end up having to move anyway. And we decided, well, why the hell would we want to move just down the road for the next however many months and be in a cramped bit of accommodation and pay loads of money just to stay in there and be miserable for the whole summer when it's going to be piping hot. So we ended up deciding we'd go up to my parents. That's where we are right now. We had a very, very quick packing up of the whole house. It was pretty stressful, and then actually the travelling part was pretty frantic as well. So we had to get Steph and the baby up without either being in the car for like 9 hours and avoiding public transport for the large part, which is near enough impossible. So at one point, I kid you not, we had one of Steph's friends who flies light aircraft trying to get his plane out of the bunk, the shelter, wherever it is, in High Wycombe, to fly the two of them up and land in the family field, and it didn't work out because he was restricted; he couldn't get into it. So instead, I ended up driving the two of them and like a few bags onto the sleeper train from Watford Gap, and then the sleeper train. So they're pretty separated from everyone else, all the way up to Scotland, Inverness, and I drove the length of the country, raced them up overnight. Thankfully, because it was lockdown at this point, the roads were pretty much empty, and I didn't speed, but it meant that it was a lot easier to drive. So I actually ended up getting there. I overtook them, and we had this really surreal moment halfway up the A9, and we had a WhatsApp locations on, and I could see that I was only like 5 minutes ahead of them. And it was awesome because I just thought, well, there's a passing place up here. The train line is there. I'm going to stop. I had a phone call. And I stopped and I said, look out the window. So I waited for 3 or 4 minutes, and then I saw the train coming from the distance, and that was there going,
That's brilliant.
Yeah, it was weird, but it was so nice, and yeah, such a surreal moment. So anyway, they cracked it on. I ended up overtaking again because there's loads of stops between there and Inverness, and we've been here ever since. So after that first 2 weeks, we had to quarantine for ourselves from my parents.
Yeah.
So we had, thankfully, they've got a decent sized house. So and we're in the middle of the countryside. So
well, if you can land a plane in their garden, then I would say it was a fairly big house.
Yeah. So it's yeah, we were very fortunate in that respect. But the 2 weeks, that being said, it's still tough to kind of cook at different times, and for 2 weeks it's just literally like, I mean, our situation doesn't compare to other people's, but it was still tough and it was pretty stressful for everybody involved, my parents included, because my dad's 77 now, and so he was one of the more vulnerable people.
Mm-hmm.
And but yeah, since then it's been pretty good, and I've settled into training remotely. So I've got a garage that's got a rowing machine, and now I've got some weights. I was using my brother's road bike for a while, and when the restrictions got eased, I was able to go out in the water sculling. So so it's all been pretty good, to be honest. We made the best of a bad situation, and while there's been some pretty tough times living with your parents when you're in your 30s, it's never going to be. It's not natural.
No, I mean,
it's a natural thing to do.
I'm in a similar situation. I suffered a pretty horrific injury last year, and I couldn't walk for like 9 months. So I snapped my knee in half. So I took my patella tendon off, snapped my kneecap in two, took my hamstring off, and did my ACL. Yeah, man. Yes. And so I had to move out my flat and move back in with my mum, and so literally was bedbound. And then it got to like middle of March, and I was able to walk, and I thought, right, brilliant. And then lockdown. Yeah, still here. So it's difficult, man. It's difficult. I mean, I'm a photographer. That's what I do for a living, and all my, like, literally everything has been moved to next year. It's like 2020 has just been scrubbed, and then we're just kind of. And it's even. It's funny. I was talking to Luke about this. And anyone who's listening to this don't know who I'm talking about. Luke Patience, Olympian, and he was just saying about how difficult it is, like preparing for an Olympic Games, and having to then defer it to next year. So, are you staying in tip-top, like Olympic style condition, or is it just? Are you just trying to keep a sort of base level of fitness so that when it does kick in, you're ready?
I would say that the training's been more base level focused, but there was because when we got back here, obviously there was for us there was a lot of stress, and I was just I'm amazed I don't have more grades. I'm pretty bad with grades, but it was mental those first 3 weeks, and so I probably didn't train much in that time. Just needed to get up here and be settled and make sure everyone was safe first. And so. But when I did start in the training, and a lot of people obviously went straight back to it, they carried on down south and they just trained in their garage or their garden and stuff, and just clocked the miles in the rowing machine. Mm-hmm. But the way the training changed is obviously it was all on land, and it was kind of flexible in that you do what you could. Everyone was allowed, given the opportunity to have a rowing machine, and you can get pretty much, like, I'd say 90% of the physiology style training done on that. It's not ideal, but you can get a large proportion of it done. So going back to your question of whether you stay in tip-top shape, I would argue the squad as a whole, myself included, have been in as good shape because all the scores we're putting out on the row machines are as good, if not better, than ever before. So, and that's, I mean, I've taken confidence in the fact that despite maybe not being on top of the smaller things, the smaller detail, I've been pretty sloppy with doing my stretching and doing the core stability, all the stuff that the physios are nagging you day in, day out when you're at the training centre to avoid injury. Just because I've had the baby, I've had to sort of change the daily routine. To suit that, but despite that, I've managed to get some really good scores, so I'm quite happy with that.
Good, man. So I'm going to take you all the way back to why rowing? It's not like I said this to Luke as well. Like why sailing? Like why did you play other sports when you were younger and then fall into rowing, or how did it come about?
I did every sport under the sun, I think. Rowing was shit. I remember I tried it as a kid, like really, like probably 10, 11, 12, So my dad co-founded the club in Inverness.
Okay.
And he would take me down when I was at a loose end on a Sunday afternoon or Sunday morning, and he'd throw me out either coxing one of the boats, or he'd put me out in a kind of a single scull, big wide boat that wasn't actually that fun. I remember thinking, this is just shit. It's slow. I'm getting not shouted at, but I'm getting told I'm doing things wrong, and why would I bother? It's just not. I don't feel like it's fun. None of my friends are doing it. It's all veterans, all like old boys. And so I didn't really get a sense of enjoyment from it at all until like maybe, I guess it was in secondary school, maybe third or fourth year. I remember thinking to myself, well, if no one does it in Inverness, that means I'm going to be the best at it. And I'm not saying I was going out to think I'll be the best, but I guess there was that sense of it's a bit different, it's a bit more special.
Yep.
And the more I did it in the single scull, and the more I had a better appreciation for the satisfying feeling of being better. And there was all the kind of romantic ways people describe and how rowing feels when you get it just right, all those kind of things started to kind of come to me. And yeah, to be honest, as much as the club, I said before, they would kind of nag me to do this, that, and the other. When I was in the crew boats rowing with old boys, they were like the most supportive in terms of they weren't pushy to try and get me into the sport big time. And I was not like a physically potential kid in terms of sport. I would be okay. I could do okay in cross country running. I'd be doing okay in athletics, but like I loved rollerblading and BMX, and I loved mountain biking. I wanted to do ice hockey when I was younger, but my mum said I was in a bit of a kind of flaky time of just doing different sports all the time. So she's like, I'm not paying for all that kit, so you're not going to get to do it unless you commit properly. So rowing is not exactly a cheap sport. I mean, the boats are pretty expensive, but thankfully the club allow for you to borrow their boats and things. So yeah, I ended up. My dad still talks about how the first time I made a funny comment to. It was when I was younger. I didn't actually enjoy rowing, but it was a guy who won the World Championships, Peter Haining, in the single scull for GB years ago in the 90s. He came up to Inverness as like I guess an appearance and trying to kind of develop smaller clubs. And I don't remember this at all. My dad said that he asked the question, "What do you like about rowing?" And apparently I said, "I like to go fast." But I'm sure what I meant was, I like the feeling when I go fast, but it's crap otherwise. But anyway, Peter Haining said, "Oh, I wish I thought of that." Yeah. But yeah, I didn't. Yeah, it wasn't until like 15, 16 until I kind of enjoyed going down for longer sessions and more frequently. And then it wasn't until university I got the bug for it, I'd say.
Yeah.
Rowing with peers the same age as me, and feeling part of a group, and it was so much more rewarding feeling like you're in a team. And I would say rowing is one of the most connected team sports. You literally, the probability you're doing well by doing the same thing is directly correlated. Like you do it together, you'll go fast.
Yeah.
So it's a pretty rewarding thing when you manage to get it right.
Yeah, and it's strenuous as well, and I think, because I think, it's one of the, you have to have a symbiosis with the person you're in the boat with, and I think that probably doesn't just develop by being in the boat. If you are like a team outside the sport as well, do you know what I mean? If you get on well and stuff like that, I think that would definitely help. And what you were saying about doing it with your peers, rather than the old veterans down the club, do you know what I mean? You've probably got a lot more in common. So when you get in the boat with that person, then it would probably work a lot better. Yeah,
definitely.
Yeah. So I've got a wee note here to ask you about unusual part-time jobs. Now that there is, it's ominous. That's what. Were you a stripper? Did you?
in a word, yes.
There we go.
Not exactly a stripper. I was bit of backstory. Rowing. You tend not to get much money in rowing. and you have to get to quite a good level to get any money. So I've for the first part of my life and through rowing career, I've lived off the bank of mum and dad to help me, and part-time jobs have been the things that supported. But outside that, so when I moved down to Henley-on-Thames. That was the place to be for Leander Club. If I wanted to really see if I could take my rowing to the next level, it was Leander Club was the place to go.
Okay.
And they're great for not only being the best. That's where Steve Redgrave went, Matthew Pinson, James Cracknell. So if you're going to go anywhere,
go there.
Go there. That was the thing. So, and I figured, well, if I find I'm not good enough, at least I know from the best that I'm not good enough. I won't make it. And I was content with that. And the club has got a huge membership base, and they did do a good job of subsidising a lot of the training stuff. So when you go on training camp, they pay for a lot of the costs, and they subsidise the food. They've got a full restaurant there, and they do crew meals. So heavily subsidised foods for the athletes. And the idea being that if they can support you financially with your foods, it means that you don't have to commit so many hours of the day to part-time jobs, because you can commit more to training. So that was great. But needless to say, Henley's not a cheap place to live, and you need to pay for rent. And I picked up a few times part-time jobs, and turned out that one of them, in terms of efficiency, time to effort put in, being a butler in the Buff was pretty good.
Oh, I was joking about being a stripper. Oh man,
No,
see,
generally was.
You know what I love the thought of some hen party guests watching the Rio Olympics, going, "Hi, is that not that guy that was?"
Yeah. I genuinely worry if there comes a time, you know, where like there's gonna there were pictures that were taken at these hen parties, and if at any point Facebook develops a bum recognition filter and tags people on it, I'm going to be in a lot of trouble.
Oh my god, man, that is hilarious. I mean, see, to be honest with you, listen, you've got to make ends meet.
Yeah,
and you're
doing
it.
What happened was I loved it because I was still at the club and training full time. So but it wasn't at GB level. And most weekends, you did a bit of a release anyway, and most of the guys went out for a few drinks in town. And what usually happens, I'd go and work, because Friday, Saturday night was in the summertime was the best chance of getting work for hen parties. So I go away for 2 hours, get that job. I get a massive head expansion, thinking I'm God's gift because all these women have been overly complimenting me. And I go back into town, and I've already got a buzz on just from being like that. And I've saved a bit of money. They're already halfway through their night. I get a few drinks in, and then it's a great night. So it was quids in.
Mate, you've got to see, the thing is, if you've been training hard, you need to put that body to good use. You know, that's
what I said anyway.
Yeah, listen, I don't blame you.
It won't be in my LinkedIn profile in the future, but I don't mind telling you.
The strangest contrast to be like GB Olympian and former butler in the Buff.
Yeah.
That's amazing, man. So, you didn't break your leg doing the butler and the Buff stuff, did you?
No, I didn't.
Slip in a sort of greasy bra or something and break your leg? No.
I did. I did. Yeah.
So what happened to your leg?
So basically, the 2012 Olympic year, I wasn't going to make the Olympics, but I was close to. I went to Olympic trials, and I was close to being on the fringes of it, I would say. But I was well aware of the fact I hadn't quite made that step. But like most sports, I'm sure there's like a development pathway, and so we had an opportunity to be in this European Championship group, and it was going to be like all the guys in the fringes of the team. Excuse me. would race at this European Championship event, and it would be, I think it was actually after the Olympics. So it meant that we finished our season at Henley Royal Regatta in July, and then we went into a period of winter training, kind of base level, so kind of come off the peak and then relax a little bit, and then build back up for this peak in September time. And in this base training block, there was some cross training, and it was you get told, well, do whatever you want, just like an hour's activity. So it was a few of my mates asked if I'd go down and play football in this AstroTurf bit, and it was fine for the first 25 minutes, half an hour, and I was running outfield, and I was getting a little bit nervous because I was going for tackles that I shouldn't do. I thought, I'm a bit nervous about doing myself a mischief, so I'll go into goals. But being goals was actually the position I did play at school. In primary school and the early part of secondary school, I was actually quite good at it. I didn't ever push down the line further because there was actually a guy really good, took my spot, and I never went any further with football. But I ended up saving these shots, and the guys I was playing with were being more and more complimentary. Like, oh shit, me, Al's quite good. Like, what? Why have we not brought him down before? And so then I was diving this way, that way, getting a bigger head, getting bigger ego, being more confident. And basically, a shot came from one of the guys who was in the team, and it got deflected halfway towards me. But by this point, I dived already. It deflected further to the left, and then whatever subconscious reaction I had, I decided I needed to push off the floor again and try and get it. So basically, my leg was on horizontal already, and my ankle was obviously it basically twisted and broke in two places at the right just above the ankle. And I've never broken anything before up until that point, and it was this really loud knuckle crack for me. That's what it felt like. But I remember feeling very kind of faint and lightheaded afterwards. But I could stand in it. I couldn't walk through it. I could stand in it. So all the guys there were saying, "Oh, I think you probably just sprained it. I'm sure you just sprained it. You'll be fine. Just walk it off." And then the other lads said, "Well, if it's sore, just go home. Don't do yourself any more damage." So I went home, and it was happened to be the day before my mate's Will Satch's Olympic semi-final, I think it was. I think it was a semi-final. And I was going down to watch him race at Dorney Lake. So I went down, and I managed to find myself a pair of crutches, got to the lake and watched the race. I managed to find a doctor at the course and asked them, "What do you think I've done to it?" They said, "Oh, you can stand in it. I don't think you've broken it. I think it's just a sprain. Just watch it for the next couple of days." And I'd already told my coach at the time that I wouldn't be down training if I hurt myself. I think I sprained my ankle. And he said, "Okay, we'll take today and tomorrow off and see how it is." And so I watched the Olympic races, and then the next day, it was 2 days later, I rested up. My dad came down to watch the final, and he was down with me. And by this time, I managed to get a wheelchair at the course. I wrapped it up. I genuinely just blagged it. I just went in and said, I broke it. I made it. I made it happen. And said, "Oh, well, we've got these electric wheelchairs." So I was going around with this mobility scooter. And not only did I get in and use that for the whole day, because I guess people just don't ask if you're on a mobility scooter, I ended up just helping myself by going round to the family and friends section. So the other side of the course, where I wasn't supposed to be, ended up watching the racing from there. I had a great time, great day. Will got a bronze medal. And that was the point where I actually thought, this is no discrediting thing to Will, because he's Olympic champion now. He's won 3 World Championship golds. But I remember at the time, he and I basically come through Leander roughly the same time. And he was a bit younger than me, but I thought to myself, if Will can do it, there's no reason why I can't get into the team, or at least have a good crack at it. I was so happy for him. And anyway, come back to the leg, went back home, it had ballooned up a big time. There was like a cleavage between the foot part and the toes, like it was big.
Ooh.
And my dad said to me, I don't know, Alan, I think you should maybe take it down to A&E just to check. Like if we find out it's sprained ankle, at least we know, give peace of mind, it's nothing else. So I waited 2 or 3 hours and then got a scan. And he said, the radiologist, who don't usually say anything, he popped his head around the corner and said, well done, mate, you've broken it in 2 places. And I was like, oh, right, okay. So that ruled my European Championships out, so I lost it. But I would say the silver lining, but on the plus side of what I experienced following that, my coach is really supportive. He his name was Miles, and he did a great job at managing me and telling me to stay down and keep training. So I trained alongside the guys, but I was on a ski erg. I don't know if you've seen a ski erg. It's like a rowing machine, but it's like a cross-country skier, so that you've got handles above you, and you pull it down to your side.
All right.
So I was sat on this bench and literally with my leg in a cast, and I would spend 16 to 20k just looking at this stupid screen and just bending like this. And what was even funnier was that it took me so much more time than everybody else. That they would go out in the water, do that mileage, and come in. They could go up, have their lunch in the canteen, and because this machine was attached to the structural beams for the whole building, they were hearing this ting every single time I went like this. And Fred Gill came down to me one day. He's like, "Will you just shut the fuck up?" Like it's just too much. But yeah, what I got from that was probably the first experience of training on my own. Like, even though I was in a big group and I was feeling supported, I was very much like single-minded. I had 6 weeks of basically just training mindlessly just to maintain fitness. And following that stint, I decided, 2013 post-Olympic year, a few guys retire. If I can't make it into the team this year, then I'll be content, and it's the easiest chance to get in. If I don't make it, I'll probably stop and move on with my life. But I made it in.
I was wanting to talk to you about winning the Henley Royal Regatta, but I want to know how it feels to know that you've made it to that level. Because, like you were saying, it's a lot. I mean, you're talking about just sitting there with a sticky on, pulling at things and all that. That's not a normal person's mentality. Do you know what I mean? You've got to, there is a certain focus that you need to have, but like a single-mindedness that I don't think a lot of people are capable of. So, see, when it pays off and you get to that height, how does that feel in relation to anything else you've ever felt?
I'd say that feeling is probably what drives me to keep going. Mm-hmm. That kind of sense of satisfaction in that I've improved. Mm-hmm. I'd say that 6 week period, that block of time where I was in the ski erg, and was the first time where I really felt like I'd dedicated myself wholeheartedly and drove myself into the ground, and then came out the other side being better and feeling significantly better. And it was horrible. I remember through that time I was doing everything with my arms. I was obviously walking around in crutches, I was doing upper body weights, and I was doing this stupid ski erg. So every time I was at home, had to get up to go to the toilet, I was getting the crutches on. These like the DOMs I had in my arms, and they were like, putting myself down onto this toilet seat was just agony. And then making food and all that stuff was just compounding into this like chronic feeling of like discomfort. And but I had faith that come the end of it, it would be rewarding. And it's the most tiny stupid thing that I felt that made me realise, well, that's a big change, is that I was in the gym. I didn't actually notice much progression through that 6-week block. Like I didn't see my scores go that much faster, and I didn't lift significantly more weights. But when I got back onto my legs, I was walking and everything. It must have been a month or so after that. I guess once I'd recovered, I was doing bench press. And have you ever seen the film Unbreakable?
With Bruce
Bruce Willis. In the bench press scene.
Yeah.
I literally had that. Okay, I put on, I don't know, it was like 80 kilograms. And I did a set of 8. And this is not going to be impressive to any rugby players or whoever's listening that lifts weights properly. But for me, it was decent. So anyway, I did 80 kilograms, right? And I was thinking, that's actually all right. So I put on 5 kilograms each side, and I was 90. I did the same again. I thought, what's going on? Like, it felt the same. I put another 10, I get so 100 kilograms, and I did a set of 8. This is. I remember. I know no one else was in the gym. No one else in the gym. I sat up and I saw myself in one of the mirrors. I thought, this is weird. This is really weird.
I'm Bruce Willis.
Good. Yeah, I'm fucking unbreakable. No. But I think it was those tiny weird moments, and it's usually times when I'm on my own. Often when I've won like a race or an event, I struggle to take stock in that moment to kind of realize what I've accomplished. So quite often I'll be happy, but I won't be. I'll probably be underwhelmed in terms of how I feel because I've been so focused on doing the job. It's usually 24 hours a week later that I realize that was fucking incredible. I'm so proud of myself.
Yeah.
But it's the smaller moments that are quite private that I find that rewards me more, and that's kind of what's driven me in my whole rowing career. It's not necessarily to be. I'd love to be an Olympic champion, but fundamentally, what I really want to do is find out where my limit is, how far I can take this sport, and how far I can take myself.
That's a good attitude to have, though. I think because
it's handy because if I don't get it, I'll be happy.
So very true, man. Very true. But again, I think challenging yourself like that is a positive thing. Do you know what I mean? Because like you said, you're not going to be devastated if it doesn't come to fruition and you get the gold or whatever. But at the same time, you know that at the end of the day, you have given your 100. You could not have given any more. Do you know what I mean? And I think that's definitely the way to go. And so I've got something here about you being selected for the Olympics 3 days before kit day. Right, that sounds bizarre.
Yeah, I don't think it's normal.
No,
but I can't imagine it's not happened before. I'm sure it's probably happened.
So talk us
at
through
some
it.
point. Well, so it's quite hard to talk you through it without boring with all the details. But basically, the guy I was rowing with, we did pretty well at the Olympic final trials. So the internal testing that we do is always in the smallest boat possible. So if you're a sweep rower, so you use 1 oar each, it's in a pair. And if you're a sculler with 2 oars each, you're in a single. So we do this trial, and basically that produces a ranking system. And it's not a case of the first person across the line is the best and second whatever. He uses it as it's like a regatta format, but it adds to a bigger picture. I almost think of your selection being based off a portfolio you make up over a whole season. Mm-hmm. Which I think is good in some ways because it means that if there is a massive error or someone's ill or you don't get the final test right, then there's like previous data to suggest that person's good and deserves to be in the boat. So anyway, that's the trial that Stu and I did well, but we hadn't done as well as that in the previous trials. So it basically meant the chief coach, Jürgen Grobler, wanted to do further testing, and it meant that the summer season, the summer racing season, was our test period. So most of the other crews were kind of selected for the large parts, probably in April. So they had a long time together. They had a long period of just settling in. I'm not saying they weren't having to be competitive with each other and other crews in the squad, but not in such a literal way that myself and Stu were against the other pair who were racing. And because of a few, so Stu was ill at the Lucerne Regatta, which is when we're supposed to do a race off. They hoped we'd do a race off and we'd have a result, and then that would become whoever won would be the pair. But Stu was ill, so we couldn't do that. And so it meant that we got pushed to the Poznan Regatta, which is the final race before the Olympics, and we did the race off, and we came out on the right side of it. The kit day was like 3 or 4 days later, so that's how we got our selection, and it was quite last minute. So needless to say, it was pretty stressful, and but kitting out day was incredible. Did feel a little bit weird because I hadn't had all the other guys in the team apart from Stu had like 5 months of knowing that they were going to be going there, whereas I was there thinking, right, well, am I really supposed to be here? Are you sure I'm selected?
You just check my name at the door again.
Yeah.
That's that. So, with your dad being a big rowing guy, how proud, on a scale of 1 to 10, how proud was he when you said, "Dad, I'm going"?
Oh, he was there, so he saw the result. So he was.
So he knew.
We knew it was going to be a race off, and whoever won would be like, failing any serious reasons. They had everything was done, so it was fair, and whatever the outcome was going to be the result for getting selection. So my parents were both there; they saw it, and we got a bronze medal. And so they were so happy, and it was really, like, I'm sure pretty stressful for them because I'd told them not to book anything for Rio until I'm going, and because it was a huge expense to go out there. They did come out, but it was probably a lot more expensive for them because they had to wait until that point in time to get things organised. But no, they were over the moon. It felt so good to be able to do it in front of them.
Yeah, especially because they've been with you the entire journey. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
That'd be pretty special. Do you know what popped into my head when you were talking there? What Luke was telling us that he and I believe his partner is called Twiggy, I think that's his name, and they have to do like a personality test for being in the boat together. Did you guys have to do that? No. So basically,
it was probably something we should have done.
No, they had to do like. Basically, they ask you loads of questions about how you deal with things under certain circumstances, and then they pair you with somebody who kind of completes you, as it were. You didn't do that, though?
No.
You've been shortchanged.
Yeah. What? So his partner at the Olympics was someone that matched his personality?
Yeah, so basically what they do is they do these personality tests. And then, so how does that person deal with stress or pressure? Or they do this, so then they put someone, like the yin to their yang, so that they can come together and be a force. To be Gordon Reid said that the Paralympian said the same thing when he was doing wheelchair tennis doubles.
Really?
Yeah.
It makes sense. It makes a lot of sense. I mean, I guess, it's probably more. I don't know. Maybe not. We don't have it rowing. We don't have it in rowing. So it's something that ought to be done. Probably.
Yeah. I thought because you've got to be so in sync. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, I don't think you have to be. So Stu and myself, I'd say, we're very different personalities. Stuart was very is very strong-minded about what he wants to do, and I would say that different seats and different boats have, like, they don't need to have certain personalities, but I think there's certain characteristics that makes a person row in a specific seat better. So to kind of explain it roughly, the guy who's in the stroke seat in the boat, the guy who sets the rhythm, he's got to be pretty not stubborn, but he's got to be pretty confident in himself that what he's doing is the right thing. Because if he takes any second thoughts or second guesses and wonders, oh, is what I'm doing not quite right, then the pattern he's setting and the consistency he's doing it at isn't going to be as strong and pass down the boat. Mm-hmm. So yeah, and I'd say the people further back in the boat, the ones, so like myself, I would say over the years I've taken pride in being good at getting the most out of the person I'm rowing with. So I'm maybe not physically the strongest guy in the team, but I know that if I'm put with a very strong guy, I'll get a lot more out of him than the next guy.
Yeah.
And for the large part in a pair, that's the important thing to do, is to work together. Very few times do you find two strongest guys rowing together and working well together and going as fast as they never quite come to be the sum of the parts.
Yeah.
Whereas if you put those two guys with guys like myself, you probably get two pairs going faster. Mm-hmm. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, 100%. Yeah. That's that. I mean, you're right. I mean, it's probably the same in any partnership in sport. Do you know what I mean? There's that they need. Yeah, having two headstrong sort of guys, I think, would probably be to the detriment.
Yeah.
Of the performance. Yeah, definitely. What I was wanting to ask you about, and I said the same thing to Luke, because I get a weird buzz out of this, right? See, when the Olympic opening ceremony and you come out and you get your tracking on, how insane was that?
What, the opening ceremony? We didn't go to it.
What?
Yeah, we the rowing team haven't gone to it for years.
Why is that?
Because our racing starts in the first week. And it's like, I'm not sure if our race was the next day. I think it was our race was 2 days after. And because it's such a late, where the rowing lake was, it's quite far away from the big sports centre that has the open ceremony. It would have been and the journey in the bus was like an hour and a half to get there. And it starts late, and then you're there for, I don't know, 3-4 hours. You wouldn't get back till probably gone 2 o'clock in the morning. So it was just, we ended up doing a kind of own, like a intimate opening ceremony of row. We put all the kit on, and we sat and watched TV. Which isn't quite the same vibe.
That's such a shame, man. Because the way Luke described it was like, it was gladiatorial. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And
I bet.
And his first games was London, so it was like a home games for him, man. That's a shame you didn't get that.
Yeah, no, I did feel a little bit shortchanged by it, because obviously you go to the Olympics, you want to experience every bit of it.
Of course.
But ultimately, you've also got a job to do, and the important thing is to get the most out of yourself. And the Team GB is all about getting the best performances, and that's what we had to do. That was decided for us.
That's like the tagline underneath it, actually. Yeah. So tell me, you're over in Rio. Obviously, the climate is extremely different to what it is in the UK. So do you have to go across earlier and acclimate and stuff like that beforehand, or is it just a case of going over there and just dealing with it?
It was a bit humid, but it wasn't like, we go to Portugal for training camp. It's obviously dry, but it's hot. We go to warm weather training camps in the years prior to going there. But compared to Luke, I know Luke went out there like a dozen times. Like
I think he was
every other week he was out there.
He's at it.
Like I think he'd been to Tokyo before Rio even happened. So like they're always training at the next venue. I don't know how they were.
I think because they've
They
got
have
to like,
to.
judge
They're
the
sailing
elements, though.
Yeah.
They've got. Yeah, I mean, what he described, I never thought that they would be that in depth about it. You know,
Yeah.
because where he described Rio, I kind of thought to myself, "You're at it. You're just gonna." I mean, he just enjoys Brazil too much. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. No, we didn't. We had like a week before to kind of getting ready for the time zone change, and that was it.
Mm-hmm. Wow. So what was it like actually being at the Olympics as an experience as a whole? Considering that you'd looked at it and thought, I want to get there, did it live up to its expectations and stuff like that?
Oh, more so, yeah, definitely. There was. I couldn't comprehend how cool it would be. The row, I was obviously disappointed in the rowing, because you build up in your head, like you've gone to the Olympics, you've got close, you're going the right speeds, all the things are pointing towards you've got a really good chance of getting a medal, and we just missed out on it. So obviously I was disappointed, but that being said, I knew we had a really tough battle to get there, and I was very proud of what we'd achieved in doing so, and getting there. And I mean, to say you're fourth place, as much as everyone goes, "Oh, fourth place is the hardest place," it is hard, but it's better than fifth. So
yeah, I mean, and also it's like fourth in the world. Do you know what I mean? So I think it's still a huge achievement.
Yeah, but the Olympic, like the experience as a whole, like being part of the most successful British team in rowing and the most successful British team in the Olympics ever, was really special, and nothing is going to compare to that, I don't think, ever. In terms of pride for being part of something that's way bigger than me.
Mm-hmm.
And the party scene was awesome.
I can imagine.
I honestly reckon I think I worked out that I averaged 3 hours sleep a night, and I wasn't like I was doing it in the daytime being fully sober. I was pretty much within about 3 or 4 hours of getting up. I was on the beers and having a great time. And what the great thing is, it's probably not the great thing, because the security wasn't great in Rio, but in my favour, it meant that if you had accreditation, you wore the right kit, you could go along to any sporting event and they'd assume you're an athlete. So I could. Several times we went to the athletics stadium, watched loads of athletics that should have cost lots of money.
Swan done.
Yeah, you swan in, but we got cocky by the end though, because the first few times we did it, we were wearing the full regalia kits, like headphones on, pretending we were right the bollocks, and we got on the team bus from the village, and we're on there being quiet, keeping to ourselves. We follow the kind of the windy pavements and paths to get into the stadium, and then but as the days went on, and realizing that no one actually even checked our accreditation, you get a bit more lazy, and by the end, genuinely, we were going in dressed for the night out, getting in the team bus. People are going for their Olympic finals, and we're dressed in like shirt, jeans, ready to go for a night out. We were respectful, we weren't boozed up beforehand, but like everyone was looking at you going, "You're taking the piss, mate."
Just stop the back of the bus with a flag up. On you go, boys.
Yeah,
have a good
yeah, exactly. And you're walking past the warm-up track, and you've seen like Usain Bolt do the round, like his little warm-ups. It's awesome. It's so cool. And yet, I felt like I was taking the piss a lot, and yet we didn't. We got away with it. So awesome experience.
Cool. That is cool. So, did you have like post-Olympic blues? See, when you get back to everyday life, was there like a slump?
I think probably not as much as everybody else, because I think medalists probably suffer it more, I would say, because medalists have such a high, because you're on TV lots, you've got loads of interviews, because you're going into bars and clubs for free, getting free shots, drinks everywhere. If you just show your medal, you feel like you're literally top of the world. And I imagine it's probably quite a hard come down from that level. And I'm not saying I wasn't given the odd perk when it came to getting into places, but it was usually off the back of a medalist. It was usually off the back of somebody else. So I think I did suffer it because it was, but it was more of a hangover than a Olympic blues.
That's yeah, you're probably right, man. If you've been drinking in the sun for weeks, and
Yeah.
it's like
Well, I ended up giving myself. Was it then? Yeah, I gave myself laryngitis because I worked out that so my throat was completely fucked, but my voice was gone. Like, I don't know what I'd done to myself, but whether it was the booze or shouting or what, we're cheering, but it was written off. I went to my girlfriend's place in Edinburgh following the games and literally slept for 24 hours non-stop. And she ended up phoning her doctor and said, I'm a little bit worried about him. And I think she mentioned Rio, and the doctor was like, get him down now, because she was at the time was Zika virus. They're worried about the Zika virus. It wasn't the Zika virus, but just by thankfully, I got an appointment that day. She saw me, she looked at my throat. She's like, "Yeah, I think you've got a spot of laryngitis. So here's some antibiotics." And I was just finishing the kind of 10-day course of antibiotics as I went out on a flight to Ibiza for the lads' holiday. So probably not the best course.
You're not doing yourself any favours, you know.
No.
You're kind of blowing the myths that Olympians are just like all about the sport and living pure lives. No, you're just
we just push it all into one really small space and then go really hard.
Yeah. Listen, fair enough. You've got to take it where you can get it. So you had a shoulder operation in 2017. What happened?
So I had a busted shoulder before that. I would have raced in Rio with a broken shoulder. So not broken, but it was. So I don't know if you know much about shoulder anatomy, but
it's a ball joint.
Yeah. So you got a tissue in between. It's called labrum. So it's like not a fascia, but I'm going to get all the terms wrong, so any medical people here, sorry. But basically, I told my labrum, it's the bit that holds the ball onto the socket. And so what it meant was that I couldn't. So when you hang off a tree, you can, without, as long as you've got strong enough hands and fingers, you can hang there for a pretty long period of time, just through passing the force through the shoulder joint. But I couldn't do that because my shoulder was falling out. But I always thought it's just making a clunky noise, it's making this funny, weird jolt. And this was from about, I don't know, it must have been 2013. I started noticing a clunk. I had no idea how it happened, but obviously over time I've torn it chronically more and more, and it was getting to the point where I could still row, and obviously I got to a high standard of rowing at the Olympics, but it was bothering me that it wasn't getting better despite rehabbing and stuff. So I asked for a scan, and sure enough, the doctor was like, "Yeah, you got to get an operation, regardless of whether you carry rowing or not. If you were to retire today, I'd still say you have to get this because you have savage arthritis later in life if you don't do it." So yeah, they just go in, arthroscopic operation. I think it was like 4 or 5 hours, and they put these anchors, tie the labrum together, and then I was in this like box sling. So I had to have my, you can see the camera there, I had my hands and arm at right angles there, and there's a block in between me there, and that was 6 weeks in that thing, which was tough because I'm right-handed for most things, and going to the toilet is really, really tough when you've got your arm like this and using the wrong hand. And it was That's not. You'd think after that, like that period of time, you become more dexterous. On the other hand, I could not wait to go back to normal. Could not wait until I got mobility back. So anyway, that's a bit more distasteful. But I do remember that was a very, very fond memory when I got back to normal.
I'm sure it was, man. Yeah. So after that, I've got something down here that says changing sides. So
yeah.
You need to explain what that means.
So it's like a change in discipline. So before I said about the sculling and sweep.
Yeah.
So there's 3 disciplines in rowing. There's sculling, there's sweep rowing, but on stroke side, and sweep rowing on bow side. So you tend to stick to one of them, but there have been people, myself included, who've done all of them at different points in their career. You don't tend to switch kind of session to session. You have a kind of discipline, you stick to it, and you hone it in, you get used to it. But from when you're a sculler, and most people do scull when they're in the junior years, you tend to get a bit of understanding how to do both, all 3. If you do dabble a bit, you know how to row generally. You can do all of them. And that was actually how I got into the team in the first place, because I was a man that can fit all shoes, and there was a few injuries that needed some seats to be filled. So I jumped in and I did literally all 3 disciplines in like the same week, I think. But eventually I had a opportunity to race, and on one side, it was a bow side, I ended up winning that pairs matrix, which led to me staying on bow side for that Olympiad and through till Rio. But following Rio, a lot of the guys retired, and there was a disproportionate number of guys who retired on stroke side, so the opposite side to me. And the chief coach asked me if I would change sides, because he wanted to even things out, because otherwise there'd be a big weakness on that side. And he knew I'd done it before, because that's how I came to the team, and he is always good to stay in his good side. So I did, and it takes a lot of getting used to. But I took it. Yeah, I tried my hardest, and ended up the following year getting a world championship bronze medal on the stroke side. So I've got medals at the world championships on both sides, which is it's not usual, but quite cool to say.
Yeah, definitely. That's cool.
Yeah, and since then I've actually swapped back again, because it was just, I felt like I wasn't getting as much as I got to a good standard. I think most rowers know which side they're best at. I guess it's like a footballer. You might be ambidextrous and be able to do both feet, but you probably have one foot that's preferred.
Yeah.
If you had to choose one, you'd use, for the penalty kicks, you'd use one foot. You wouldn't interchange all the time. So I actually changed back again. So yeah, that was an added complication, but yeah. a new challenge again.
Mm-hmm. So tell me, see with Tokyo just round the corner, is there an attitude change, or is there a change to what you're doing in your program to try and improve on your position at Rio?
I think I started this Olympiad feeling like I wanted to, with the awareness that I'm going to be one of the older guys in the team, and I'm the oldest in the team now. And I recognised that if I was going to be my best, I would have to do more to get the most out of myself. Because there'd be certain things that I would start to be less good at. I'd be potentially I figured I'd be less quick to recover from high intensity stuff, and I'd have to optimise my recovery. And so there's been a large focus for me to capitalise on what I can do outside of just the normal training. So I looked at my diet more, looked at slightly alternative recovery methods. So I've used and got a lot of benefit from using a floating tank therapy. A place called the Float Point in Pangbourne. A mate of mine, he runs one, and he's been really supportive and allowed me to go down there and use that for training. And it's been a great help. Another thing is red light therapy. It's another one I've used.
What's that?
It's called. So, have you ever heard of infrared saunas, things like that? Yeah. So, it's a form of, there's a technical term, photobiomodulation.
Oh, now we're learning.
Yeah.
I like that. I like that. It's good.
So it's I'll give it in layman terms because this is how I tell everybody else. It's that I try to encourage to use it. So basically, it's light's a form of energy, and if you use a certain frequency, you can it can affect your tissues in different ways. So obviously, UV light is from the sun. In the daytime, you get sunburnt, hits your skin, burns you if you have too much of it, or you can get a tan, produce their higher melatonin. But if you use a different frequency, a low level frequency, red light, it can energize your cells in your at different depths in your body to help them recover faster.
Wow.
So it they use it. I mean, you've probably seen people on Amazon and adverts, people using red lights, kind of anti-wrinkle facial things. Maybe I don't know. It's old women using them, things like that. And old catalogs used to have that, but this is a relatively newer development. There's a lot of people using them more now. Like there's American football players. There's a lot of kind of high-profile athletes using them, and so it just helps your joints, helps your muscles, like regulates a lot of stuff. And I've been very, very lucky with there's a company called Red Light Rising in the UK, and they gave me one to use for a while, and they've been good supporters for me. So there's a plug.
There we go. That's all right. We'll tag them in this.
Yeah.
Do you know, I've never heard of that before. That's really interesting. Do you know, we had, it's not been released yet, but we had a strength and conditioning coach and who's also a university lecturer on, and he was talking about kind of recovery methods and stuff like that, and he never mentioned anything like that. But that's really interesting. Actually, do you know, I could probably be doing with some of that. After my injury, I can't run anymore or anything. Do you know what I mean? So I've started cycling, and but I've still nearly a year on, still pain at the top of my kneecap. You know.
Oh well, this is so. Bear in mind, obviously, I use it for recovery, and it has helped a massive difference to. Was when I had my shoulder. I used it for that. My wrist operations. I used that for the recovery of them. Made a massive difference. But separate to me, my fiance and my mum and everyone I've recommended who's actually had it has felt big benefits. My fiance, she's got, a worse shoulder than I had. It's still in pieces. Unfortunately, NHS isn't great at sorting out shoulders if you're not a high-level athlete on Bupa. But
it's another plug there.
Yeah. But well, maybe not a plug for the NHS, but anyway, yeah. So she's always sworn by it. Like she struggles to get any relief from painkillers, but this red light stuff, it makes a big difference. And so anyone who's got joint stuff issues, look it up, because it's made a massive difference to me and my dad as well. He's two knee replacements, sorry, and the pain went down massively for him.
Wow.
Saves him having to use Voltarol all the time, which is obviously not ideal to keep on piling in painkillers. If you can just whack a light on and feel better from it, then why wouldn't you use that?
Yeah, totally. So you mentioned your wrist operation. Was that your injury in 2019? Yeah,
I had both of them. So I want to turn the light on. Can you see me still?
Oh, I can see. Yeah,
you can see me. Okay, it looks pretty dark itself. So tendinitis is a pretty common thing for people to get. But I had this thing called intersection syndrome. So if you imagine your wrists tendons are like very nicely organised motorway system that go down to your wrist and out to your fingers. The intersection point was, for me, was causing some friction. For whatever reason, two tendons were rubbing against each other and causing this like really, really bad pain. And I'd had tendinitis before, and it wasn't the same. It was like tendinitis is like a creaking feeling, almost like cotton wool pulling apart. And that's when the tendon rubs against the sheath outside it. But this is completely different. It was such a sharp pain that it got to the point where I would go out rowing and I'd last maybe 6 or 7K, and then all of a sudden my wrist would seize up and I would like struggle to open my hand up. So after like several kind of periods of the physios tend not to want to do invasive action in terms of surgeries until it's actually absolutely necessary, because it makes sense. See if you can recover from it. So I'd have like 2 or 3 weeks off on the bike, try and let it settle down, then go back into rowing, and then it would flare up again, and then 2 or 3 weeks off, back in the bike. And it would just keep on happening, keep flaring up, and eventually I had to get injection, didn't work. And then finally the surgeon looked at it and said, yeah, well, we've tried everything up to this point. So what they do is there's like a fascia that holds all those tendons together, and instead of them being held together, he just takes that fascia out, so all those roads in the motorway just go wherever they want, so they don't mingle with each other. Wow. That's how I describe it. And so they, in theory, they shouldn't interact and they shouldn't cause friction and therefore not cause pain. And it was supposed to be a quite quick recovery, but I think, having spoken to a few other people separate to the surgeon after that, they said, well, I reckon it's probably close to a year that you actually feel fully recovered. But he was having me back rowing within, I think it was 3 or 4 weeks. You have to use it's one of those operations that if you don't use your wrist, it'll end up being worse than it was before. So you have to do the action, but you won't be fully recovered until a year after. And it's likewise with my shoulder. You can be back rowing quite soon, but you won't feel like it's completely recovered until a year to kind of 16, 17 months. Mm-hmm. They still give me, to be honest, my wrist, they still give me the odd bit of jip, but it's nothing like it was. But it did cause me a lot of problems in terms of selection, because I missed out on the 2019 World Championships, and the pre-Olympic Worlds is usually quite an important one, because Jurgen tends to pick most of his team based on the previous year.
Yeah.
So it's kind of hard to break in after that, but nothing I could do about it.
Nah, fair enough. What I was wanting to talk to you about as well is, because you were saying you've got a new baby.
Yeah.
And obviously when you become a dad, your priorities change.
Yeah.
So obviously you've got this single-minded focus on being the best that you can be in your sport. Do you think that did your priorities change? Oh, obviously they would change. It's a stupid question, but do your goals change?
I'm trying to think how to articulate it. It's maybe easier to explain that. So we hadn't anticipated lockdown when we were trying, and we did. I'm not saying we had a schedule and we were saying, right, well, this is going to work out for the Olympics, but it was a consideration. We had to work out whether it was going to be viable, and we didn't want to delay until after the Olympics, unless it was not going to work and whatever. So, long story short, we did it. We had a window opportunity. We decided that if we did it, we managed to conceive, and in that time, that Bea would be around and at an age where, come the Olympics, she could potentially go out there. It wouldn't be too much of a strain for Steph, because she's still kind of small, but she's old enough to be okay to fly, and her mum would probably spend most of the time living with her to kind of help out while I'm away in training camp. But obviously things changed because the lockdown happened, and now kind of go into next year, and there's added time needs to go into kids when they're close to 1 year olds than they are when they're babies. They require more stuff. So yeah, there's definitely a change of priorities, because I mean day to day just now, when I've been training, I've been working around feeds and working around bedtimes and working around that training routine that I would normally have, like starting at 8 in second session at 11 o'clock and third one at 2 o'clock. It's changed into, if I'm lucky, I'll start the first session at midday, and I'll probably try and cram in maybe 1.5 sessions in the evening if I can. I'll just pack it all in. I genuinely finished a row machine session at about, it was 8:15 at night, and then come in for dinner and then go to bed, and I've been like lying in bed like, no way I'm sleeping for quite a while.
And then up and at it the next day.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So no, but it's been. I'm sure that the challenges and the stresses are only going to be, if I get a chance at an opportunity to be at Tokyo, there'll be a time where I'm on training camp and I won't have those stresses, and I'm sure I'll feel great, because I'll have trained myself to kind of cope under these extra strains. I definitely don't see it as a detriment to my training.
Good. I think it would be a motivation, I think, if anything.
Yeah, big time. Yeah.
So before we finish up for this evening, I want to know about what is your plans for after you've finished competing, because you said that you would be the oldest person in the team and stuff like that. So I take it that Tokyo would be your last games. Is that fair to say?
I think it'd be fair to say. Yeah.
And so what's the plans after?
I don't really know. There's so my fiance, she works for a watch company, the Marlow Watch Company, and they've relocated from Shiplake to Kinross area.
Okay.
It's because the two company founders, one of them's from Marlow, and one of them's from Kinross, and he's the designer, and they've basically relocated to there. So that's going to be our target location to be at. And to be honest, I'm just going to wait and see and wing it a little bit with what I do. I'd love to. There's a position coming up with Scottish Rowing that I'm hoping that I can be a good applicant to apply for the job, and it's like I can't remember exactly the title, but the role is essentially coaching up and coming and kind of high performance juniors under 23 athletes to get into the GB team. And while I'm not entirely sure whether I desperately want to stay in rowing as a career long term, I know I'd be very happy to at least pass on a lot of my knowledge and my experience that I've learned thus far to the younger generation and to others in Scotland, because I know if I'd been told differently about my potential if I had committed to the sport, that I could get to, I would never believe that I could get to where I'm now. But had someone told me back in university days that if you just stuck at it, then you do it, I probably would have done it quicker. In honesty, if I had that self-belief, ultimately all I did was nudge myself a little bit, one step at a time. But my first university coach, she went to Olympics in Barcelona as a cox. I remember she didn't have any faith that I would do anything what I've achieved, and so she's probably thinking, I don't know how he's managed it, but had I had that. I'm not saying I wasn't supported or nurtured, but like I think the sentiment I'd love to get across to youngsters in Scotland, and it's not just in rowing, but most sports. If you can stick, if you enjoy the sport, and if you stick at it and you're patient, you can far succeed beyond what you think you're capable of. And I think there's this fashion to kind of think that you have to be at your best, and if you don't achieve like international greatness by the time you're 20, then you're never going to make it. And that's not the case. Like I didn't break into the national team until I was 26.
Yeah.
And I know people have real life jobs they want to do following that, but ultimately I love the sport, and I'm honoured to be able to do what I love and be paid for it and funded by the government to do it. And why would I do anything else? Like as much as I do need to get a real job at some point.
Yeah.
Like my body's still working and I love it. So if I can get a job or position where I'm able to kind of share that experience and guidance, then I'll be very happy.
Brilliant, man. That's a good plan. That is a good plan.
Yeah.
Right, Alan, we're going to call it a day there, man. But thank
Sure.
you very much for coming on and sharing your experiences and stuff like that. I'm always I love hearing stuff about people who've taken it to that level. Do you know what I mean? Because doing any sport to that level, it's beyond my comprehension. Like I thought I played football at a reasonably high level, and then you just realise you didn't. Do you know what I mean? So when you speak to someone who's actually been at the top end, I get a right buzz off that. So thanks very much for coming on and talk to me.
No, I've enjoyed it. Thanks very much.
No problem at all. So I'm just going to sign off. Thanks very much, folks. Please hit those like and subscribe buttons.